We had the good fortune to Zoom with Kareem Roustom to discuss his new composition, There Will Come Soft Rains. Kareem is a local Syrian-American composer whose works have been performed by the BBC Symphony, Boston Symphony, San Francisco Symphony, and the New York Philharmonic, to name just a few. There Will Come Soft Rains is an anti-war work that uses passages from the Bible and poems by Andreas Gryphius, Sarah Teasdale, and Annie Fields to explore the effects of war. Interviewed by Tom Regan, tenor, and Ruthie Miller, executive director, Kareem discusses how the work evolved, the experience of working with Coro Allegro artistic director David Hodgkins, various aspects of the creative process, and the message of the piece.
So, how did this composition come about, and what were some of the texts that determined, in consultation with John Brown, who's the president of Coro and who commissioned the piece? Did you select some text yourself, and how do the various texts complement each other in your view?
Um, yeah, how did the commission come about? I think, well, it must have been initiated by David, I imagine, or in consultation with John. And David and John approached me, and John originally had the text in mind, the Trainen der Vaterland.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is
and
movement one.
yeah, he just came to me with that particular text, which was, very powerful. And from there, that was kind of the central text, and then we had some back and forth built around this theme of anti-war poetry, which is timeless.
Mhm.
And just kind of, I thought it would be interesting to have texts from different time periods, including two of the poems are by women, and which gives us um, completely different perspective. When I think often of Benjamin Britten's War Requiem, the
Mhm.
poetry by Wilfred Owen, who perished in the trenches. I wonder if there's poetry by nurses, who were treating these soldiers. I'm sure there is, but I thought it was just really important to have both of those perspectives. And then, of course, the Sarah Teasdale takes a really kind of, I think, very modern view of this, that war is also against people is also war against nature, in some ways, and that nature will move on with or without us, and that's something that she's warns of in very eloquent and powerful, sparse language.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Nice.
Great, thank you. So, Coro Allegro has participated in the world premiere of two of your previous commissions, The Son of Man and Rage Against the Tyrant, which will soon be released by CD by Coro Allegro. Not quite yet, but it's almost there. So, what aspects of There Will Come Soft Rains about the process and the product has been similar, and what do you think is different this time?
I think The Son of Man is very different than both of these works, the other two works. Rage Against the Tyrants and There Will Come Soft Rains, I think are related in their sort of stance against tyranny. I guess Rage Against the Tyrants is more about um, people standing up to that, and specifically the civil war in Syria, because some of the poetry deals specifically with Aleppo. That one particular poem is quite beautiful, and really the terrible price they paid, or that people pay for making that stand.
Mhm.
Um, so that is specific to a country, whereas I think There Will Come Soft Rains is specific, I think, to the whole world. But I have to say, since the Syrian civil war started in 2011, and now this kind of shocking turn it's taken, which we all pray will be for the best, th that long period of time, I mean, it's 14 years, a lot of my pieces have reflected on that, and that sense of loss of something that was such a big part of my life early on. Um, but I suppose I've been trying to find more universal messages from those very specific incidents.
Mhm. Kareem, you've worked with David Hodgkins, the choral director, for many years, several times. Can you describe this experience of working with him on a new composition?
Yeah, I have to say David is one of the most meticulous conductors I've gotten to work with, and I think the reason is because the sort of rehearsal slash gestation period
Mhm.
of learning a new piece with coro is so much longer than I usually have with orchestras, where you show up, it's maybe two, three rehearsals a dress, and then, we're off.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so it's a very different experience and one that I relish to be able to have, long conversations, really detailed, um, excuse me, questions about what text means and how it should be thought of and how it should be interpreted. And I think David's really a master at that, at really kind of sussing out um, the meaning behind the words and the sort of the emotion behind the meaning behind the words as well, and trying to sort of get that instilled into the choir, and then eventually into the orchestra as well when we finally put it all together. So it's, I think for me, it's always thrilling and deeply gratifying to have that kind of luxurious schedule.
Nice.
Does your Syrian American heritage show up musically in There Will Come Soft Rains? And if so, where in the piece should we look for it?
Does it? I think this is one of those pieces where it probably does not. Although, I mean, I think you'll have to tell me. Because there are times where I know I'm playing with a rhythm, a particular set of scales or pitches or something like that, and I know directly where they come from. Um, and there are times where I hide that and I do it on purpose, but then there are times where just things come out. But I think this is one of those pieces where um, there isn't that kind of intentional kind of hide and seek, if you will. I think this is just a piece that I latched onto the text and tried to understand it as best I could. So whatever has come out is just pure instinct.
Mm. Mm. You may have already addressed this in part, but I just sort of ask another slant on the question. But how do you think the current political situation, what's going on in the U.S., what's going on in Syria and the Middle East, has affected your composing for this piece, if at all?
Oh yeah. Uh, I think very much so. And as I was kind of thinking about the questions you might ask and the text I chose, um, I think if I had grown up to become a preacher, I would have been a fire and brimstone preacher. And I think in a way, there are certain aspects of this piece that are very much fire and brimstone. Um, but I mean, I think it's in the text too, and it kind of pulls it out of you. Um, I think, as artists, as composers, as scholars, whatever, we don't live in a bubble, right? We live in a society, we live in a community um, that's affected by these tectonic shifts, whether they're positive or just wrong. And we're living through the latter. I think music's place is sometimes to comfort, it's sometimes to shock,
Mhm.
and I can think of Schoenberg's A Survivor from Warsaw as a piece that was meant to shock people into really thinking about what happened. And sometimes it's both. Again, coming back to the Britain War Requiem, that's a piece that is meant to reflect on this past event, but it was also rooted in Britain's deep, deep pacifism, and he was a conscientious objector. Um, so not only was he trying to sort of console, but he was really railing against the madness uh, that was World War One, and which led to World War Two, and which led to so many of the problems that we continue to have today. So yes, all of these things are very much on my mind.
Mhm. Okay.
So I think this is actually sort of a follow-up to that one. How does the message of there will come soft rains reflect your personal philosophy?
Um, well, I think it's reflected in the poetry that was chosen after what John had came with. And maybe, on some deep level, he sensed like this is the right poem for Kareem, and so with the past work that we'd done, maybe that was already sort of in place. Um, I think most people are trying to find a way to live a good life. Um, and that means many different things to many different people. I think we are also, some of us are trying to um, be mindful of of our actions and what we do and how it affects the world around us. And I suppose at this time, my philosophy is to say, wait a minute, just kind of really look at the price that there is to pay for these actions. Um, and I suppose this is a hard question to answer because these our values and what we think is right and wrong, I think shifts over time. Um, but I think with this particular piece, I'm pleading for people to sort of take a moment and really consider the price that there is to pay for the war, not only the sort of people fighting each other, but mankind's proclivity to sort of wage war against everything, and specifically, the price that nature pays, we pay, and whether strip mining or whether it's dropping bombs with all these chemicals and how they affect the earth and all of that. I suppose it's a plea for people to sort of really, really think about that. But given the text that I chose that spans over 2,000 years, it's it's not a new message.
No.
Mhm. Mhm. So Kareem, in your career, you're composing all types of music for all configurations, orchestra, chorus, various configurations, various instruments. What are the special joys and challenges of composing for a chorus, would you say?
I think, well, I think the human voice is the most impactful instrument that we have. And I think that there's something really special about people coming together to sing together. So for me, that the first joy is those two, the sort of the physical sound of it, but also the community of coming together to put a piece together, to learn a repertoire for a concert. That's just something that I just find really, really special. Um, but as a composer, I've learned or tried to learn over time how to write kind of idiomatically for this beautiful instrument. Um, and um, and I think what I've learned over time is just to write more simply, let the text speak, and let the voices do what they want to do naturally. So the joy is also in learning and
Mhm.
growing, for me as well. So I find writing choral music to be the most challenging medium of all of the mediums I've written in.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So David has talked about the fact, Kareem, that you are composing in this piece in extended string techniques. There are things like hitting, the instrument with the bow. There's playing on the bridge, there's playing behind the bridge, and there's all kinds of sounds effects. Can you talk about that and what the goal was and what kind of colors and tones and feeling you're looking for from that?
Mm. Wow, I think all of these come at least from my interpretation of the text, and what the text is talking about. For instance, the Grypheus has this very kind of march-like feeling to it, right?
Mhm.
You can feel these hordes marching on the town and setting buildings on fire and that sort of a thing. So there are elements of that, um, where I also asked for the strings to kind of fall apart. The rhythm just falls together. Maybe people tumbling downstairs or something like that. Just this kind of chaotic horde. Um, I think the other elements are just kind of uh, again come from the text and maybe some colors that Sarah Teasdale is painting. Maybe this kind of mist over a field as she describes these birds that are coming in, um, or the frogs in the pools that she's talking about. Um, and I suppose a part of it is just kind of expanding the color palette a little bit, um, and trying to sort of um, feel my way through the text.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
I had a question. I understand that John Brown wanted to have a horn, a French horn in the piece, but since you're sort of given this instrument to work with, what did you do with it? What does it, how does it function in the work?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was so happy to have a horn, and especially one of the caliber of Michael Bellafato, who's a wonderful horn player. Um, well, I think it plays different roles. In a way, it's a narrator through history, right?
Hmm.
As we go through these different texts through time, in a way, the horn is kind of guiding us on this journey. Um, in the opening, with the biblical text, shall the sword devour forever? It acts as a very, as ancient. I mean, it's probably one of the most ancient instruments that we can imagine, the horn, or the ram's horn, or these kinds of instruments. So in a way, it plays a role that way. In the Grypheus, it more plays the role of the kind of military bugle type of horn, or a hunting horn. And in a way, it has that kind of, it begins that way, but then there's this moment where it has this cadenza, and it kind of, it's a very unsettled and maybe rageful cadenza that eventually mellows, and by the end of that movement, the horn is almost sighing and sobbing, with these little techniques of kind of playing these notes that are slightly out of tune, and I think it'll have this very special feeling. With the Annie Field's poem, which is imagining this soldier walking on a road and seeing this weed growing on the side of the road. It has a very plaintive and very much a kind of a solo feel to it, of somebody who's out alone, and very lyrical type of uh, writing for it. And finally, I think with the Sarah Teasdale, um, it it becomes almost part of the choir, because it starts us off at one point singing a little bit of the same melody that the altos begin. So it plays these different roles, but I think I imagined it as our guide through
Hmm.
these historic poems.
maybe to start to sum up, what do you hope the audience will come away with at the end of this? You talked about this a little bit already, but just if you want to sum up what you hope that people will take away.
Well, I mean, excuse me, first of all, I hope that they're moved. I hope that they feel something. That's the most important thing that we as performers and composers and conductors, all want first and foremost. Um, I think that probably this particular audience, most everybody will resonate with the messages of these poems. But I also think that I hope that they will think more closely about our everyday actions that we don't notice that are actually also a war on nature in many ways. And I hope that people will really begin to sort of think about um, what they do and the kind of the price that there is to pay for things that make us comfortable or make our lives convenient. And just I hope that they might have more of an awareness of that and act on it. But
Mm.
that might be asking too much.
Well,
I have
good.
a question that you may have already answered, but I'm going to ask it in a different way and see if there's anything else there to add to it. And that's sort of like in your when you're composing and you want to get a particular effect, I would imagine there's sort of a problem-solving process you have to go through. Um, how do you approach that, and what were some of the problems in this piece, and how did you solve them?
Well, that's the most fun part. I think when we have like a horn soloist, and we were able to get Michael to commit to doing this performance. Then I was able to share with him sketches and say, look, this is what I would like to do. Did I notate it correctly? Is there a better way to do it? And so then there's this back and forth, which I love so much, working with performers and getting their feedback. And I learn more about their instruments. I learn a little bit about them as people. So that for me is one of the joys of composing. Other times, sometimes I might have a crazy idea and I borrow my daughter's cello. She's 12 and I did, try it out and say, okay, I think it can work. If I can kind of do it, then I know a professional can, so sometimes it's just kind of grabbing what's close to hand and seeing if it can work.
We are so grateful to Kareem for joining us to talk about his wonderful composition, There Will Come Soft Rains, which will be premiered by Coro Allegro on March 9th at our concert From Darkness to Light. We hope we will see you there.